All right, so we are in Mark chapter 13 in the lectionary this morning. I want to read through this really quickly. I'm going to set it up in Mark chapter 12 at the very end. Last week is where we were. If you weren't here, we were talking about how remember the people were going through the treasury and they were dropping all the big money, and then the little poor widow woman gave her last 2 pennies. And unlike how we most have heard it, that Jesus is praising her, he's actually saying this is not good. The scribes are devouring widows' homes, and it's as if he's saying, yeah, there goes another one right there. It just happened again. Jesus is, in the vernacular, he's pissed, right? He's upset about this. He's in the temple. He's watching this happen. He's telling them this whole story about, like the temple looks like Rome instead of God, right? It looks like the kingdom of Caesar instead of the kingdom of God. Something's wrong. It's devouring. I mean, like, we get that Caesar's devouring widows' houses, but why is God's house devouring these? It's wrong. The whole thing is messed up. And so Jesus is geeked up about this, right? And he's walking out, and I love the story in Mark 13 where it starts like this. It says, as he came out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what large stones and what large buildings." And I love this because it's kind of like, have you ever been with someone where they're losing it and you just are trying to divert their attention to something else, right? You're like, whoa, look at that car. It's a pretty color of green, isn't it? They're like, I just want to kill everybody. You're like, oh, look at the puppy. Just let's think about something else. And it's literally what's happening here. Jesus has just watched this poor widow be devoured by the house of God. And he is fuming, and he comes out of the temple, and he's just probably still like, I can't believe it. And one of the disciples says, "Look, Jesus, what a pretty building." It's like this, trying to just get him to think about it. But that didn't work, because Jesus says this. He goes, "Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left here on top of another. All will be thrown down." So that didn't work. That diversion did. Jesus is like, I'll tell you what's going to happen. This whole thing is going to burn down. And it's almost like Jesus says, this whole thing needs to burn down. Are you with me? How many of you right now feel like when we look at the systems of this world, and especially of our government and our politics and our BS that's happening, it's like this needs to burn down. This is not okay. We've gone way too far in this experiment. Like, this is right. And then, but let's zoom back in a little bit closer to home, and let's look at what the church in America is doing. And I look at the church, and I want to, it's kind of like, politics and all this stuff and the election and everybody's crazy and RFK Jr. Like, really? Seriously? RFK? Like, seriously? That's where we're headed? Anyway, sorry. And then we're like, this is nuts. And they're like, yeah, but we have nice churches we can go to. Do you see what I'm saying? Where I'm sorry, but in Oklahoma, most of the churches in Oklahoma just look like the partisan politics that we play at the Capitol. This needs to burn down. This is what needs to happen, right? Not one stone needs to be left. You know what I'm saying? It needs to go all the way down. We don't even want to have one stone on top of another, because if we have one stone, that's too many that looks like the edifice that is devouring widows' houses. Not one stone should be left on top of another. Jesus is not talking, notice what he's not talking about Rome, he's talking about the temple. He's talking about his lane. He's talking about his place. He's talking about his tradition. He's talking about his religion. Are you with me? So one of the things that a lot of people try to get me, people from my past life they think that I've lost my mind. Anyone else like that have those Facebook friends? I've curated my Facebook and Instagram mostly to where I don't have to hear them, but every now and then they'll come in and they'll say things, and they want to talk about politics as if all of my hope is in politics. And I'm like, I'm sorry, all that is not where I put my hope. Where I put my hope is in the house of God and in community and in loving one another and taking care of one another the way that Jesus does in his life when he's under oppression from a government. Are you with me? But even this is like, when I'm talking about that the systems need to be broken apart, I'm mainly talking about religious systems. I'm talking about church stuff. I'm not talking about your beloved politics and your red blue team or whatever. Like that, I do not put my hope in that. I want for good policies to come out of our politicians and our government. But my hope is in this. Are you with me? And so when people start to say, well, how do you feel about this? Like, well, hey. I'm a pastor. And if you want to talk about systems, and you want to talk about tearing things down, I agree with that. But I think that you think that I'm playing your political game and what I'm actually, or your partisan game. But what I'm talking about is that the house of Jesus needs to look a lot more like Jesus. I love what Andrea said maybe a week ago now. Like every day is like a whole month, but I think it was like maybe a week ago, Andrea, did you do the deal where we put up your video and you said something, I remember the line that I loved was this, and I can't remember what you said right before it. Maybe you can remember, but you said, we've heard the Sermon on the Mount. We can't go back. We know better. Do you remember that when she said that? What did you say right before that? You were talking about something about how people, oh my gosh, it was so good. Oh man. I didn't plan this. I don't ever plan what I'm going to say. It just happened. So this showed up in my brain. But anyways, I loved what you said because you were like, I know what you said. You said, well, God can use anybody. God could use anybody to be president. I mean, God's using, and you're like, yeah, God used an ass in the Bible. And you're like, but we have the Sermon on the Mount. We know better now. Come on, man. That'll preach. Like, we know better now, right? Don't say, well, God, I mean, it's just the way. No. We know that Jesus is against this kind of politics. We know Jesus is against this kind of devouring of people. We know that Jesus doesn't play this game, right? And so what we do is we need to lean into the way of Jesus as we walk through this world and as we go through this next administration or whatever you want to call it. All right. So here's what I was thinking. Jesus, he says, do you not see all this is going to be torn down? Then he goes into what is called the Olivet Discourse. He goes up into the Mount of Olives, and 4 of the disciples, Peter, James, John, and Andrew, they privately ask him, when the temple is going to be destroyed, like that's not good, right? Like when is that going to happen? A lot of people, conservative. Forget it. I'm not even going to talk about it. I don't want to talk about that crap right now. All right, so he talks about when the temple is going to be destroyed, right? And he says, beware that no one leads you astray. Many are going to come and say, I am he, and they will lead many astray. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. This must take place, but the end is still to come, for the nation will rise against nation. Remember, we've heard this stuff, right? By the way, this is not about the future time. This is about the temple being destroyed. All right, I'm just going to say that so we move on. That's all I want to say. The last verse, though, in this that we're reading today is verse 8. And the last sentence is this. Verse 8, last sentence. He's talking about all these things that are going to happen before the temple is destroyed. And he says, this is but the beginning of the birth pains. This is just the beginning of the birth pains. I want to talk about a couple of things today, all right? So first of all, I want to talk about being cynical and being skeptical, all right? I want to talk about the difference between being cynical and skeptical. Jesus says something here that I think actually moves us to a place where I think we need to be right now, all right? Because, by the way, I'm going to move. I've got 2 other words that are going to show up, but if we move to be more cynical right now, we're in trouble. If we move skeptical and move towards being just skeptical, I think we have some hope. Are you ready? All right, so cynical, I looked this up. Can I just read a little bit? Cynical means this: having a general distrust of other people's motives and actions, believing that people are always going to do something bad because they're only going to watch out for themselves. That's different than the Imago Dei. Believing that everyone has the image of God is one thing, right? All right, but this is believing that they're only self-interested. All right? So they believe that people are motivated purely by self-interest. They are distrustful of human sincerity or integrity. That's cynical. And I'm just going to ask everyone, bow your head and close your eyes. No, I'm not. How many of you feel cynical right now? It's pretty easy to end up being cynical right now. All right? Skeptical is different. These get conflated, but they're not the same. Skeptical means that you're not easily convinced. You're not just going to, somebody says something to you and you're just going to believe it. I mean, you have doubts and reservations, but you are critically questioning. It's a critical questioning. You're not cynical. You haven't already decided, oh, this is all going to hell. Blah, I hate everybody. Everybody's just a piece of... No, you're critically questioning the evidence and the facts and the data that you get. You critically think and search for evidence. All right, so skeptical means you're not just going to believe it right out, wholesale, but but skeptical is, I want to learn. Do you see how that's different than cynical? Cynical is like, nah, I'm not even going to try. Because I already know. I already know what these people do. I already know what they think. I already know what they're going to do. All these people, and we do it in a lot of areas. We have cynical attitudes about stuff. And that closes off our minds. It closes off our hearts. I don't mind us being skeptical. Like when I hear certain leaders say things, I'm like, really? I'm a little skeptical. Let's do some research. And by the way, I just finished my master's, so I think it's funny when people say, do your research, and they do a Google search. Yeah. It's on Reddit. Oh my God. Yeah. That's when I get cynical, is when people think that, no. It's like skepticism is hopefully it will move us to learning, to critical thinking. Are you with me? All right? That's skeptical. Cynical is, I'm closed off. I already know. Well, have you read this book? Well, I don't need to read that book. Have you listened to that interview when they put, I don't need to listen to that interview. I know what happened. Cynical. Bro, that dude, that person has already left the reservation, right? You see what I'm saying? They're already gone. Cynical people, okay, watch. If you lean towards being cynical, you're going to go to being nihilistic. And that's even worse than cynical. Nihilistic means to have a belief system that rejects fundamental aspects of human existence, such as morality, knowledge, meaning. There's a lot of nihilists in America right now. Are you with me? You know why? Because for 10 years they've been cynical. And now cynicism leads you, I'm serious, it just does. It'll take you to nihilism. And by the way, all those people that are making you cynical want you to be nihilistic, because if you don't believe in anything good in humanity, they get to own you. That's why Jesus said, let's tear it down. Not one stone left on top of another. Because it's too gosh darn cynical. And you think, well, it's pretty cynical or nihilistic for Jesus to say that everything's going to be torn down and everything's going to go away and it needs to be torn down. Isn't that? So, no. Jesus was very skeptical. See, a person who's nihilistic is a person who may believe that life is meaningless and that nothing has value. Jesus didn't believe that the temple and God and the way of God didn't have value, right? So it's not that. So if I'm going to move, I don't want to move from cynical to nihilistic. I want to move from skeptical to hopeful. Are you with me? Hopeful, the word hopeful comes from the word hope, meaning optimism about a future event. Now, some of you are like, well, you're skeptical. I don't know how hopeful I am about a future event. Well, that's okay. That's okay. You keep on looking, keep on searching, keep on critically thinking, keep on working, keep on listening, keep on learning, keep on reading, keep on showing up. Are you with me? I hate this microphone. It's optimism about a future event, and the suffix full means full. I love that. That's actually in a book that I read. Hopeful, full means what? Full. Wow. You're like, dude, you really worked on that one. So, if you're hopeful, hold on, you're full of, hey, you're full of hope. That something good is going to happen. Jesus, watch this. The last verse he says where all this stuff's going to happen. Wars and rumors of wars. Everything's going to be torn down. The temple's going to be destroyed. This is the beginning of what? Birth pains. What happens after birth pains? Anyone? Say it. A birth. A new life. See, Jesus isn't nihilistic here. He's not cynical here. Might be skeptical, but he's hopeful because he says, you know, when all of this is going to happen and all this stuff it's going to tear down. And they're like, when is this going to happen? That's not going to be good. When the temple's destroyed, that means our whole world is over. And Jesus says, no. That's just the beginning of new life. Are you with me? So Jesus isn't cynical. He's not nihilistic. He might be skeptical, but he's hopeful. Jesus is literally saying to us that when we see all of these things happening, it is the beginning of the things like I've never given birth. Like, I know that's hard to believe. Shocker. But I have 4 kids. And so I watched my ex-wife go through that 4 times. Some of you have done that multiple times. Some of you have seen that or observed that. Some of you have heard stories of that. Lindy and I were talking about this week, and it's like, it's painful. It's a painful experience to give birth to something that is new life. For a lot of people, trying to bring new life can actually kill you. For some, when they bring in a new life, it does something to your body to where it messes you up to the point where you might not ever be able to give new life again. We've literally, people have heard of all kinds of different things that happen to mothers and bodies of people who are giving birth, it is painful. It is work. We call it labor, right? It is a difficult thing. So the birth pains, the going through the time, it's kind of like in the Psalms where it says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, hopeful, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Do you see what I'm saying? Like even though I'm the contractions and the labor and the hurt and all of it is all I can think about is how much my whole body hurts and how horrible it is right now. But on the other side of that, hopefully most of the time, there's new life. Are you with me? And so I don't want to trigger people in here with birth and all that kind of stuff, and I know, but Jesus uses this metaphor for the temple being destroyed. That it's a beginning of birth pains. What Jesus is saying is like there's hope on the other side, guys. We're not going to be like, oh, the temple. No, it's like what new life is being birthed because this thing has to die. Are you with me? We have to go through labor. We have to go through pains of birthing process to get to the hope, to get to the new life. So it's not easy and it's not automatic, but what Jesus is pushing us to with this metaphor is don't give up. Don't stop showing up. Don't stop believing and hoping. Because on the other side of this, I promise there's going to be new life. Are you with me? So that's what. So simplicity for me. That's it. That's what I want to say. I want to say let us go through the valley of the shadow of death, so that we can get on this other side where there's new life. Let us be the ones who have a lot of potlucks, and we laugh together. And even in the midst of a Friendsgiving or a dinner or a lunch or a movie time with each other, we're sitting there and we say to each other, like, holy hell, right? Like, are you kidding me? Did you see that tweet? Did you hear what just happened? I'm not going to be cynical and nihilistic. I'm going to remember the words of Jesus saying, these are just the beginning of birth pains. Something is being birthed. That is new life. Are you with me? I am hopeful. I just had a conversation just the other night with someone who was like, are you really just devastated about this? Is that really what he's on the other side? And he's like, why are you so devastated? Why are you so? And I was like, and I wanted to say, first of all, because he said something about social media. You know, I look at your social media, and I was like, I went back and I started looking at my social media, and I started looking at Simplicities, and I was like, yeah, there's some stuff, but what I'm also seeing is a lot of smiling faces. What I'm seeing is people showing up for each other. What I'm seeing is us talking about hope. What I see is saying, like, hey, we're not going to give up. What I hear us doing is saying, you know what? Yeah, this sucks, but we can get through it together. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's where, and listen, Jesus, that's where Jesus was. The whole thing was falling apart. And Jesus is like, it needs to fall apart. Let it fall apart. Because then we can give birth to something that's going to probably be a little bit better. So simplicity. We're not going to be cynical. We're not going to be nihilistic. We can be skeptical. But I want us to let that skepticism move us to being hopeful. Amen? Let's be hopeful. So, let's all say it together. Let's all say this. Say, I'm going to be, and everybody say it together, hopeful. Let's do it again. I'm going to be hopeful. I'm going to be hopeful. I choose to be hopeful. I will bring hope. I am hope. I will birth hope. I will spread hope, even though it all sucks. Are you with me? So let's say it one more time. I will be. I will be. I choose to be. Amen. Grace and peace. Go and give each other grace and peace. Do that right now. Do that right now. Give each other grace and peace. And bring hope to someone. How's that? I love the restraint. Yeah.